Welcome back, cruisers. Today I want to tell you about an ATV excursion that Alex and I recently took in Bonaire. We'll travel across the eastern side of the island on ATVs, visit a working lighthouse, and even explore a cave. Oh, and I'll share how I ended up in the medical center and what you should do if this ever happens to you. Also, I have a few thoughts on whether you should book your excursions through the cruise line or not. Okay, let's get started. This excursion was booked through Carnival and was just over $100 each. It was listed as East Coast Off-Road ATV Experience. As a side note here, if you take the off-road dirty buggy and cave exploration tour, it's going to run in parallel to this tour, so it's just a matter of whether you want to be on an ATV or a UTV. One of the listed requirements was that all participants were to wear jeans or trousers. This wasn't exactly ideal, as mid-October in Bonaire is rather hot. That being said, I was less than impressed when we arrived at the meeting spot on the pier to find half the passengers weren't wearing shorts, and that the requirement apparently was more of a suggestion than a rule. Typically, these types of requirements are added to protect you from some perceived danger or the tour operators from legal action if you get injured. While it's uncomfortably hot wearing jeans riding ATVs in Bonaire, I highly recommend that you do so on this tour, and you'll see why in a few minutes. The bus to the ATVs was a 70s-style school bus with the windows removed, which at least meant there was a nice breeze while we were moving. After about 30 minutes, we arrived at the tour location. There were no ATVs in sight, and we were invited to either wait at the picnic tables or walk around the property. When you've been on as many excursions as we have, you develop a sense for how things are going to go pretty quickly. The picnic tables were placed between two rusting cargo containers. A broken down trailer filled with old helmets and magazines blocked the backside, and a weathered tarp overhead provided a bit of shade. While the reprieve from the blazing sun was nice, the area was filled with hundreds of flies already enjoying it. We opted to walk around the property while waiting for the morning ATV tour to return. I gotta say, it's not quite what I expected.
Me either. I'm thinking like water, beautiful trees, fruit trees.
He done brought us to a junkyard.
Yeah, pallet.
He just said it's a farm. I think we're farming rust out here. Hey, I found the ATVs. We just got to uncover them. Okay, we're good. After a while, the morning tour returned, and we were finally able to get started. I didn't realize it then, but this delay would become important to our tour later. Anyways, after a few minutes, we reached the end of the pavement and headed off into the backcountry. We saw wild donkeys, goats, and even some flamingos. The trail twisted and turned as we climbed over hills and into valleys. At points, the path got very narrow and cut between thorn-covered trees. I'm guessing, at least in part, this is the reason for the jeans requirement. Along the way, the guide would occasionally stop to ensure everyone in the group was staying together or draw our attention to some point of interest. I have to say, the guides on this tour were extremely professional, knowledgeable, and friendly. After about another 30 minutes, we arrived at the first real stop, the Bonaire Caves. The guides passed out water bottles and then led both groups into the caves. Alex went ahead into the cave with the groups, while I hung back a little bit so I could grab some aerial shots before joining them. When I was younger, we used to explore limestone caves in North Florida. That usually meant climbing down the hole at a base of a tree, squeezing through some narrow passages before you got into anything that opened up into a room. This cave was completely different. The entrance was above ground and at least 50 feet wide. There were stalactites and stalagmites everywhere. It was amazing. As I made my way further into the cave, the daylight faded behind me. All I could see ahead of me was the glow of everyone's phones. I pulled out my phone and started recording. After passing a few people looking for Alex, I decided to hold my phone over my head to see if I could see him. This wasn't exactly the best move. It meant I was looking up at my camera and didn't see the large rock on the floor in front of me. I hit the ground pretty hard, but I managed to not drop my phone or crush my backpack. So I stood back up, brushed myself off, and continued deeper into the cave. At this point, I want to stop here and tell you what I did wrong, what the tour company could have done differently, and why it's so important to report any injury, no matter how minor you think it is at this time. Okay, let's start with what I did wrong. Like almost all of the other people on the tour, I was using my phone to film inside the cave and navigating around by its light. The problem with this is it means you're looking at your screen and not where you're stepping. I recommend if you take this tour to bring along a flashlight. And don't walk and film at the same time. I think the tour could improve this experience by bringing battery-powered floodlights. Not only would it make it a bit safer, but it would also allow the visitors to see the full scope of this incredible cave better than they can by the glow of their own phone lights. Now, I didn't think this was a big deal at the time, so I didn't bring attention to my fall to the tour operator. That was a massive mistake for sure. If you don't report your injury, they can't report it to the ship, and you take all liability for any medical cost. Yes, we have travel insurance and health insurance, but if you don't report it while you're on the tour, you're basically on your own. This isn't legal advice. I'm just sharing with you what I learned after returning to the ship, but I'll talk about that more in a little bit. I finally found Alex and we headed back outside. In the sunlight, I snapped a couple pictures of my hand because it was starting to hurt quite a bit, but we jumped back on the ATVs and headed for the shoreline. We rode south along the shore until we arrived at the Spelunk Lighthouse. We were actually able to walk up to the lighthouse and even got to explore the interior of the lighthouse keeper's abandoned house. At this point, several passengers were getting a little antsy about the time. It was already 2:30 and we were supposed to be back on board the ship by 2:30. The lighthouse is 4 miles from the bus as the crow flies, and the bus was still another 4 miles beyond that to the pier. And I don't know if I mentioned it, we were on ATVs, not crows. While several passengers were vocally concerned, others, perhaps more experienced cruisers, knew that since we booked this tour through the cruise line, there was no chance that we were going to be left behind.
You trying to slow us down getting back?
They're waiting for us, remember.
This is a great reason why you should always consider booking your tours directly through the cruise line. While you may find a great deal on shore, that savings can evaporate pretty quickly if you don't get back to the pier on time. A flight home from Bonaire would cost about $450 each, and that doesn't even include all the other expenses that you'll surely incur. Anyways, besides a minor holdup with one of the dune buggies, it was a fairly uneventful ride back to the bus. After saying our goodbye to the guides, we climbed back on the bus and headed for the pier. Again, at this point, we're still 4 miles away from the ship, and we are well beyond our boarding time. The bus ride back to the pier was exhilarating, to say the least. We arrived back 30 minutes late, and we got to experience the full pier runner treatment firsthand. Back on the ship, I got cleaned up and realized my hand was now swelling and getting very black and blue. My jeans had been hiding the extent of my leg injury, and I didn't realize that I had also scraped my stomach. After going back and forth with Cindy for a while, she convinced me that I needed to visit the medical center. Once there, they explained to me that they would contact the tour company, but if there had been no report of the incident, that the medical visit would appear on my account by the end of the cruise. I acknowledged my financial responsibilities, and they continued to examine my injuries. After the doctor reviewed everything, she said nothing looked broken, but the x-rays would be reviewed stateside in a few days, and if they found anything else, they would contact us. They gave me an ice pack for my hand to help with the swelling and recommend that I take Tylenol for the pain. The nurse, doctor, and everyone else in the medical center were so kind and friendly, and after the visit, the service desk called my room several times a day to make sure that I was recovering. I really appreciate the care I received there. But anyways, back to the excursion. Even though it started out a bit shaky, I would definitely recommend this tour. The locations we visited were amazing, and it was a ton of fun. All right, see you guys later. Bye.
Okay, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell and see where we're going next. Bye for now.